Welcome to the long-awaited meeting number 58 of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. The committee is meeting today to begin its study of the Alberta Electoral Boundary Commission report for the first hour and the Quebec Electoral Boundary Commission report in the second hour. I do want to thank you, colleagues, for coming back. I know we had invited you in the past and that changed, and then we asked you to turn around really quickly, and you all have, and that means a lot to us here at PROC. So we do acknowledge it and we do appreciate it. The clerk and I will maintain a consolidated speaking list of members wishing to speak. I am sure it's going to be a very pleasant meeting. If it cannot be, I need all comments to go through the chair. Otherwise, amongst colleagues, I think we're pretty good to go. For colleagues on PROC, I would just like to share that there is two budgets that we will need approved. And there was also a letter that was sent around from JIC, the Joint Interparliamentary Council, which I think we can find a way forward on. So I would encourage just some side conversations so that we can maintain the business of committee to stay focused on where we need more time. But I'll leave that with you as you are masters of this domain. For our first panel, we have with us the Honourable Randy Boissonnault. We have George Chahal, we have Gerald Soroka, we have Arnold Viersen, and we have Chris Warkentin. So with that, you will have up to 4 minutes for opening statements. I would appreciate any extra time back rather than asking you to conclude your comments. So with that, Minister Boissonnault, the floor is yours. Welcome to PROC.
No, thanks, Madam Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I truly appreciate this opportunity to come to PROC, and I want to thank the committee members for their hard work on reviewing boundary readjustment reports, and meeting 58 tells me all I need to know. It is a testament to the strength of our democracy that we have these open processes to create electoral district boundaries that, as best as possible, maintain population equality while taking into account important social and geographic factors. And the process to date has been orderly.
So I am just going to pause the time and say that as Canada has two official languages, we just need to maintain a little bit.
Oh, I'm too fast for it. And I told the translators
I'm
I
sure
would be
you've
slow.
never heard that before.
No.
But here we
Je
are.
vais parler plus lentement, Madame la Présidente.
Then I'll speak much more slowly, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
So, friends, I do want to thank the Nonpartisan Alberta Commission for their work and for efforts made following the public hearing process to respect some of the traditional geographic boundaries in Edmonton. And one of those is 97th Street. So we worked hard with colleagues to make sure that 97th Street would be the boundary for the riding of Edmonton Centre, reflecting years of history. And with the utmost respect to the Commission, I would like to share my concern that the proposed northern boundary of the redrawn constituency fails to account for the historical pattern for boundaries of ridings in the city of Edmonton and the particular community of identity contained in North Edmonton in particular. The Yellowhead Highway, Highway 16, and the rail yards that run alongside it represent one of the most definitive geographic boundaries within the city. Through it, residents and products flow across, into, and out of our city. Indeed, I'm proud to say that our government is currently partnering with the provincial and city governments to turn Yellowhead into a full freeway. And it's a massive and long-awaited project that's going to benefit residents and bring more Canadians and visitors to our city. Now, while freeways like the Yellowhead are really important to connect people, it does have the understandable effect of geographically separating neighborhoods, physically and psychologically. And so it's little surprise that this boundary has been the northern boundary for almost 40 years, for everything from municipal to provincial ridings and boundaries. It is a clear boundary distinction between north and central communities. Significantly, it is the border of 18 neighborhood community leagues that are run along the freeway. And I believe this most strongly represents institutional recognition of this as an appropriate boundary. Despite this, under the proposal, there are 3 distinct communities north of the highway that have been separated from other North Edmonton communities and put into Edmonton Centre. So what this would do is it would put these neighborhoods in a federal riding that is separate from their public school division, separate from their provincial and municipal school representation, and separate from the unique character that makes up North Edmonton. So respecting the community of identity contained in an electoral district cannot permit separating these communities from similar North Edmonton communities in this way. And furthermore, this proposal fails to take into account the nature of this freeway as a major geographic feature of Edmonton. Therefore, I would propose that the northern border of Edmonton Centre remain the Yellowhead Highway. And I recognize that this correction may impact the population of proposed Edmonton Centre electoral district. And so to respect the Commission's median population quota in mind, I would propose that the communities of Parkview and Laurier Heights be returned to Edmonton Centre. These neighbourhoods are well connected with the communities on the southwest border of the new riding. They share community leagues, schools, they share hockey rinks, and they would be well served by remaining in the riding that they've been in since 2004. Donc, mes chers amis, je propose que...
And so, friends, I suggest that the north boundary of Edmonton Centre remain the Yellowhead Freeway, and in order to address issues of population, that Parkview and Laurier Heights be returned to Edmonton Centre. Thank you.
Vous.
Thank you.
Maintenant, Mr. Chahal.
We'll now move to Mr. Chahal.
Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues at PROC. I provided an objection as well to the Alberta Commission electoral boundaries proposal, and I have two concerns with the proposed riding. One concern is on the northern boundary of Calgary-McKnight, and the other is the proposed names of the two northeast Calgary ridings. Starting off with the northern boundary of Calgary-McKnight, and there's two maps here for your reference, one of the whole city and another image that just provides some clarity on the areas I'm going to be discussing. The proposed northern boundary of Calgary-McKnight should include all homes south of 96th Avenue, which is Airport Trail. That's a highway that divides both these constituencies. The northeastmost corner of Saddle Ridge neighborhood is currently included in the new riding of Calgary Skyview, highlighted in yellow. On the map, and you'll notice highlighted in blue, is the highway that divides both communities. You'll also notice north of the blue Airport Trail, there's a number of land that is undeveloped. Those are future undeveloped lands. This part of the city has some of the highest growth that we've seen as a city. And from the 2021 census, I would argue potentially that we may have already increased population in the new North Riding by 25 to 30,000 individuals. The other important item to note is the yellowed shaded area cannot be accessed by the constituency to the north. All entry points into that area of Saddle Ridge must be through Calgary-McKnight. Calgary-McKnight, this area of Saddle Ridge also shares a community association, or it referred to a community league in other cities as well. The submission originally provided by many local leaders, elected officials, and community organizations requested that a proposed riding use Deerfoot Trail, and Northeast Calgary is very unique along boundaries such as major highways. The Commission also acknowledged that Section 15.1b of the Act goes on to provide that the Commission shall also consider the following criteria: the community of interest or community of identity in or the historical pattern of an electoral district in the province. I'd like to note to committee members, there is no impact on any other riding other than Calgary-McKnight and Calgary Skyview, which is the new riding defined by the Electoral Commission. As mentioned, Calgary Skyview is the fastest growing riding in the city of Calgary and the Calgary region, and there's a lot of land that is currently planned and ready for development. Impact on the two ridings. There's a total population of Calgary-McKnight, with the yellow area included in Calgary-McKnight, would bump the numbers up to about 131,000, and the total population of Calgary Skyview would be reduced to about 107,000, not including any growth that's occurred over the last 3 years. And mentioned, I believe that we've seen probably about 25 to 30,000 new residents already in this area of Calgary Skyview. Now, there is a population variance, but there is a precedence for this variance across the country. We've seen Dartmouth, Cole Harbour, with a variance of close to 19%. We've seen Moncton with a variance of about 18.5%, and Kingston and the Islands of about 15.3%. So there is a precedent nationally. The most important thing is community members living in these communities be kept together and they're not separated from their places of
Mr.
worship.
Tahoe, we haven't had a meeting like this for a little while, so our technical skills are just being, I guess, improved, and your time is up.
Oh,
So thank you.
okay.
And it was just so you know, it's 4 minutes and 7 seconds. So you went up by 7. The beep, beep, beep did not happen. In future, you will hear a beep, 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 and that would mean that your time is up. Mr. Soroka, to you the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to all the committee. I guess I would not be here today if I felt the Commission did everything that they should have done properly. When they first proposed to the riding of Yellowhead, it was to increase about 12%, and I'm not talking area, I'm talking population. So that's about the only significant change. What they have done, though, is completely rearranged the entire riding, where now I have 45% of the original riding and about 55% brand new. So that, to me, is a substantial change, and that is why I'm here tonight or today to argue these points, because there's no more continuity in any shape or form. From north to south, I have essentially Calgary residents with 7 hours away in Grand Cache of a small mining and not only mining, coal mining, but also forestry, oil and gas. So quite a differentiation between, and then tourism on the east, west side with Jasper, Banff, and national parks, and then Kananaskis country. When I start looking at the rationale, the Commission itself didn't seem to make sense when they made their changes. When they first talked about continuity, that made sense. What they had done was combine certain ridings or maintain a new riding in an area that didn't exist before or in the proposal. And by doing that, it really reconfigured all of Alberta. What I meant by they didn't make consistencies is because they tried to make sure certain counties were together, where then they chopped Yellowhead in half. And so they're in one end, they want to say we want to keep counties together, and the other hand they say no, we'll divide them. Rocky View County now has 4 MPs representing it, so that doesn't make sense. When they start looking at populations, everyone is trying to get around 116,000. Now they've got variances of 121,500 all the way down to 110,000. So again, they didn't follow their same mandate. By doing a lot of these things, there wasn't that continuity what I thought it would be. All I'm trying to do now is, as well as they want to change the name from Yellowhead to Jasper, Banff, Canmore, I want to maintain the name Yellowhead for the history value as well as the significance of David Thompson was the explorer. His name was Yellowhead, or Téjon in French. Apparently they spoke a lot more French back then than they do now in my writing, so that's the historical significance behind it. This is the reason why I want to put Yellowhead back together. It's hard to maintain the same name of Yellowhead, and yet you've got Yellowhead County split in half. So these are my main proposals. I know for a fact it still doesn't address what I'd like it to do. I'd prefer it to have gone back to the proposal, what it originally was. That made a lot more sense to me. By making these changes, yes, I'm affecting essentially 5 different ridings. I do have full support from my fellow colleagues, MPs. This isn't something where I'm trying to make a change where, oh, well, it's going to benefit one voters or one riding over another. In Alberta, as you're well aware, you know, it's very strong conservative, so there isn't this, oh my goodness, now we're trying to balance this out a little differently. That's not going to be a factor. So those are really my whole premise behind everything, and I think I'll leave it there short. Oh yes, there's also mayors that have written in letters and getting that support as well. Other than that, because I have full support and everything going through, I also felt that the boundary changes that I proposed, I brought everyone within that 1,000 population of that 116,000. So my recommendation comes a lot closer to what they were desired for, as opposed to their 5,000 and 6,000 over or under, as well as the boundary lines make a lot more sense with what I've drawn, straight lines as opposed to all the curves and changes that way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Soroka. And I really appreciate you going through our questions. So that was noticed, and I want you to know that I appreciate that. Mr. Viersen, up to 4 minutes for you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll just get my timer started here, because I like to talk. So the rationale for the proposal that I'm making, I think MP Workington and myself are making the same recommendation. Just around, there was not a lot of objection to the original proposal. It seemed to make sense. The ridings are called Peace River and Grand Prairie, and you would like to folks that live in the particular ridings would like to be associated with the respective name. And so Grand Prairie is kind of a distinct community, and Peace River is kind of more of a geological area given the Peace River basin. We call it the Peace Country. And so it would be nice to keep folks that are associated with Grand Prairie in the Grand Prairie riding. And so, for example, I live about a 4-hour drive from Grand Prairie. If I was going to Bezanson, DeBolt, Crooked Creek, Sexsmith, Beaver Lodge, Wembley, any of those communities, La Glace, and I was telling folks, hey, I'm going up, I would just say, I'm going to Grand Prairie on the weekend. Even if I was not going to the actual city of Grand Prairie, I was just going to that general region. So that would be kind of now, if you're going to High Level, for example, you would say, I'm going to High Level. And folks from High Level have to pass through the town of Peace River. They live on the banks of the Peace River. They have an association with the Peace River that would keep it respective. So it's about the name in that respect. The other thing is just around folks are still struggling to adjust. People vote in the same place for a long time. And I get a lot of complaints about, hey, I've always voted here. Why do I have to now vote there? That continues to be a challenge. And so when you mess around with the boundaries, people end up having to vote in new places, and that causes confusion. So I would suggest that we keep the boundaries the same as the most same as possible in order to get that. And so the first proposal did that fairly well. It's a logical thing to just say, okay, and then the rest of Mackenzie County goes in. The logic of it is very good. And keeping folks that live near the city of Grand Prairie in the Grand Prairie riding makes a lot of sense. There was not a lot of opposition to the first the first proposal. The challenge is that there isn't an ability to voice our communities to voice their opinion except through this forum. And so they're not as engaged on it now. So when I've been going through the community saying, hey, this is the new proposal, folks are like, no, that's a little bit odd. And so I've got the mayor of Mackenzie County. He has said that the first proposal makes more sense than the second proposal, and I don't believe that he spoke at all one way or the other on the first proposal. But when I showed him the maps, he was like, "Oh, that I'm in the process of getting a documentation to support that, but that can be provided for sure." The demographic consequences that would be about, given that it's the first proposal, I don't think that, given that it's the first proposal, I think the demographic consequences are fine. There's no domino effect. It's just the two big ridings in northern Alberta that are changing. I've talked to colleagues in the area, and that seems to be fine.
Thank you so much. I appreciated that, and I'm going to pass it to Mr. Workington now. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I've supplied committee members with a number of papers, including the population statistics that outline what the current reality is, what the redistribution first proposal would propose, and what the redistribution second proposal proposes. And so you can see, committee members can see that what we are proposing. I'll leave that to committee members to review that, and we can talk about that in the questions and answers. I've also identified 3 specific maps, one which is the current reality, one is the first proposal, and one is the second proposal by the Commission. As you can see, the highlighted area is actually Mackenzie County. That is the municipality of the northern region. And I believe, as does Mr. Viersen believe, that that municipality should remain intact. Now, I have had the privilege of serving for a number of years. I lived through the last redistribution. Prior to the previous redistribution, that municipality was in fact intact. But what's also important for committee members to understand is not only does that municipality need to be intact, there's many First Nations communities that live along Highway 58. So if committee members can look at high level on the first map, you can identify that there's a highway that leads across that portion of the province, and that Highway 58 really is a connector for First Nations communities in that region. There's dozens of smaller First Nations communities along that highway. And when I had the opportunity to represent the entirety of that area previous to the past redistribution, the benefit was I would be able to have regional meetings in that area and bring everybody together. We also have a single MLA that represents that region as well as the local municipal government. So when we have when we have meetings, when I would attend meetings, I was able to do that. Currently, what is required is that both members of parliament driving 5 hours will be required to travel up for a single meeting when those large meetings do happen. And so while there is, I'm certain that the commission wanted to divide land mass, it's important, I believe, for Highway 58 to be reunited in a single riding as well as the municipal district of Mackenzie to be in entirety in its place. Going further south, so basically what happened is the first proposal was to create Mackenzie County bring it back together in its entirety. Mackenzie County and the regional folks all supported that idea. So they didn't indicate that to the commission. They weren't opposed to that. They were thankful that they were finally back into the same constituency, and so they didn't object. Once the second proposal came back, which was the continuation or the separation, I heard large numbers of folks that talked about their frustration about being divided again. And so I think it's important that if we can bring the municipality, the school districts, the hospital is located, that regional hospital is in high level, and so people along that Highway 58 and going in that municipality would be to high level. Now moving to the southern part of the riding, really the swap that happened during the first versus the second. What happened was the commission alternatively proposed an idea that DeBolt, Sturgeon Lake, and the communities of Crooked Creek and Goodwin would be all separated, cut out of the Grand Prairie riding and moved into the Peace River riding. The challenge is that they really would be geographically separated from folks that they actually conduct business with. They really need to be tied back to Grand Prairie. That's where all of the work that these folks do. This is where they work. This is where they go to school. The school district spans over there. So I can answer additional questions, but
Brilliant.
hopefully that provides some clarity.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we're going to enter into 6-minute rounds. I know that there is a desire to see more than one round. You can see the clock. You know when the panel ends. So any extra time, you're welcome to pass back to me, and I'll keep the meeting moving. Otherwise, 6 minutes rounds, starting with Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's great to see my Alberta colleagues here. I'm going to ask my first question to Mr. Boissonnault. I take your point with respect to Yellowhead Highway, but in terms of the historical pattern of ridings, you submitted that had been the boundary line for Edmonton Centre for the better part of 40 years. However, I would note respectfully that isn't so. Prior to 2004, the former Edmonton West riding and the former Edmonton Northwest riding, before Edmonton West, which encompassed much of the downtown core, extended north of the Yellowhead Highway. I would further note that the communities that will be now placed in Edmonton Centre north of the Yellowhead Highway, including Kensington and Athlone, at the provincial level, had been in the former Edmonton Calder riding for many years, a constituency that extended both on the north and south side of the Yellowhead Highway, represented by MLAs David Agan, Doug Elniski, Brent Rathgaber, Lance White, and the current municipal ward of Ananuk, represented by Councillor Rutherford, extends south of the Yellowhead or north of the Yellowhead, depending on how you look at it. So I'd be interested in your comments on that.
Well, thanks, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Mr. Cooper's questions. Let's take them in reverse order. And Anarnik is a great example, and Councillor Rutherford's my councillor. And if you take a look at Anarnik, and the piece of that riding that actually straddles Yellowhead is an industrial area with very few residents living there. And it's an industrial area that actually preceded the Yellowhead coming through the city. And I think what we're working on, Mr. Cooper, is the fundamental principle of communities of identity. And I think, and I'll check the record, but if I misspoke, it wasn't that Edmonton Centre has been the way it's been for 40 years. It's that many political boundaries have respected Yellowhead as a northern or southern boundary for 40 years, including a number of the provincial MLA boundaries, a number of the city wards. And also, if you know the area really well, it's your riding's just north of it, and so Mr. Cooper knows the riding well, Madam Chair, because his riding is just north. But if you take a look at even school boards, and so we are contending that if we want to keep communities of interest together, that we respect that northern border of Edmonton Centre. And if there's any issue with population, because we understand that the commission has to be within 5% either way of 115,000.
And I don't want to interrupt you, Mr. Crossman, but you did make the point about the population adjustment in your submission, and I have other questions for other members, but given the shortness of time. But I would note other federal ridings, Edmonton North used to extend north of the Yellowhead as recently as prior to the last redistribution. The riding of Edmonton East extended north of the Yellowhead, so there's plenty of precedent for federal ridings, provincial ridings, municipal council wards extending north or south of the Yellowhead. So I'll leave it at that. Mr. Shahal, what you are proposing would result in a significant deviation having regard for Edmonton and Calgary federal ridings. It also, I would note that it appears the Commission made some adjustments with respect to Saddle Ridge based upon some of the input that they had received. It's noted in the report that they configured McKnight having regard to it being a fairly densely populated part of northeast Calgary, and the Commission further explained that they had taken the more densely populated parts of Saddle Ridge and put them in McKnight, consistent with creating a more densely populated northeast Calgary riding and the less densely populated neighborhoods of Saddle Ridge and Skyview. I'd be interested in your comments on both of those points.
Well, thank you. And through the chair, first of all, community of interest or community identity is identified in the Act as a priority. This would go against that. Airport Trail is a major boundary. It's a highway. And Saddle Ridge is one large community. So adding one part in and taking another part of Saddle Ridge out goes against Section 15.1b. I would also like to note the provincial boundaries, as you addressed in your previous question. Calgary Northeast, the boundary is Airport Trail, and the two provincial boundaries are divided by Airport Trail. There is no access into that yellow hatched area that I've shown from Calgary Skyview. It all comes through Calgary McKnight, through the community of Saddle Ridge. So the right thing to do, and for the best interest for community members, the community association, is to have a clear line, which is Airport Trail to the city limits and all the way down to Métis Trail.
Thank you very much. Mr. Warkentin, with respect to the changes made in the final map, the Commission noted two things. One is the fact that Peace River West Lock has seen a much slower rate of population growth, whereas the Grand Prairie area has seen a much faster rate of population growth. And secondly, the geographic size of, in particular, the Peace River West Lock well, both ridings, in fact. And you addressed the latter point, but could you address, you may want to elaborate on that, the latter point and address the first point with respect to population growth.
So
Yeah, thank you.
Guess not. Do you want this coming out of your next round? Because you were asking for 2 rounds, and then what happens is we go back and forth, and when
fine.
we
That's
respect
fine.
the amount of time one speaks and one answers, I will note that Mr. Boissonnault was probably entitled to about 20 more seconds before he was cut off. So I do take this role very seriously, and I do take this work very seriously. Mr. Cooper, would you like an answer now, or would you like to see if you get a second round?
We'll wait for us. We'll 20 seconds.
Yes, I believe that it's very important to consider the redistribution proposals in that the first one actually better reflects the room for growth for the regions that are most likely to grow, whereas the second proposal actually puts the riding that of Grand Prairie into a higher population number, which obviously doesn't allow for the growth that we expect in that region. That certainly Grand Prairie has been the growth center and will continue to be the growth center. And so I believe that putting it at a lower number like the first proposal did is the right thing to do. The commission got it as good as they could in the first report.
Thank you,
I believe.
Mr. Walkerton. I'm going to now go to Ms. Sahota.
Chair, my first question goes to Mr. Boissonnault. You spoke a little bit about community organizations that border the Yellowhead Highway. Would you be able to share more or reflect a little bit more as to why keeping the highway as a boundary would be important to these organizations?
I appreciate the question, and just to give colleagues a little bit of context about community leagues, they actually were founded around the same time that the city was founded in about 1904, and in the city of Edmonton we have 160 registered associations that call themselves community leagues, all volunteer run, about $100 million plus in assets, everything from community leagues to community gardens and what have you. In my own riding of Edmonton Centre, 26 community leagues. And if you take a look along the Yellowhead Freeway, there's 18 community leagues, the entire length of the Yellowhead Freeway, that use it as the north or the south boundary. So 9 community leagues south, 9 community leagues north, using across the whole Yellowhead that as the boundary. And how did community leagues grow? Well, they grew around their actual neighborhood. And so the community leagues themselves are saying, this is a natural, it's a man-made geographic border that literally, if you look at the maps that we sent you, and I know you all have, is like a man-made river that runs through the city. And it's a river of traffic. It's a river of goods. And so, I mean, I know what it's like when I travel east or west on that ride. And you actually have to make a conscious decision of which road you're going to take to get through the tracks, because you're not turning on every street corner to get through the tracks, because otherwise the trains wouldn't run. And so it is a geographic barrier. And I think even if you take a look, Ms. Sahota, at postal codes, they use the Yellowhead as north and south boundaries for postal codes. And the business people have also demonstrated that if you take a look at Kingsway Business Improvement Association, which is in my riding and on the north side of my riding of Edmonton Centre, the Yellowhead is the natural border there. So it is a natural border. It's a community border. You don't see kids crossing that highway to go to school. It just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. There would be not a safety issue, but just a community of identity issue. And so in that sense, it's our contention that from a community identity perspective and a community of interest perspective, as Mr. Shahal said, that the northern boundary be maintained to Yellowhead.
Thank you, Mr. Boissonnault. Mr. Chal, I wanted to know a little bit more as to the objection that you're making here today. Was it an objection that you made previously to the commission, or is it a new one? Have things drastically changed between version 1 and 2 of the commission's report?
Thank you, Ms. Soda. In version 1, they had not used Airport Trail as a defined marker. They had cut out other communities. So through the objections that were made by community members, they've included those, but by doing that, they cut out another part of the community. And so the community, what they asked in their original objection was to keep the entire community association together. And those are the communities south of that blue line, Airport Trail, because they're one community. They're the same community association. They share the same rec center. They share the same schools. They share the same places of worship. And they are separated from the new riding through swaths of development land, which we don't know when they'll be developed. There's no access to that little yellow area from Calgary Skyview. It's a highway in between. So I think what the commission was trying to do was to adjust population variances and not taking into account that Calgary Skyview, as proposed, is probably already over the population at the population variance, and in the next decade will be much higher because of the tremendous growth that Northeast Calgary receives. And that's clear with everything we see on the ground and working with my colleagues at other levels of government. And I want to note once again, the provincial boundaries is Airport Trail, and it's clearly defined because it's a highway in between Northeast Calgary.
How much more time do I have, Madam Chair? Is there anything else that you'd like to add as to the communities of interest?
Well, and the only other piece I'd add is, I mean, there is precedence in other parts of the country for the variation. I think this would provide Northeast Calgary with a lot of growth, and that community would probably equal out if it already hasn't so in population variance. The only other piece is that on the objection of the riding names, I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but in the original submission made, Calgary McKnight, the airport was not included. Now it is. So I would suggest that Calgary McKnight be called Calgary Skyview, and the new riding of Calgary Skyview as defined be called Calgary Stoney or Calgary Country Hills to better reflect the communities that are being represented on both sides of the Deerfoot Trail. Country Hills is a major thoroughfare in central northeast Calgary, which be a better representation to represent that new riding, or Calgary Stoney as well, because Stoney Trail runs through it. So that would be my second objection. I think for community identity, to better identify the communities and to keep folks to be able to know who their representatives are and how they're best represented moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Terrier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to say welcome to the members who have come before us to explain their feelings about the redrawing of boundaries. My first question is for Mr. Boissonnault. Please tell me if I'm mistaken. I mean, I don't live very close to your area. I have the maps here, but quite honestly, it's a part of the country that one day I should go and see. Perhaps you could invite me. But please tell me if I'm mistaken. You're proposing that a part of your riding, the proposed riding, be taken out, Calder-Kensington? I'd like to know how many voters that represents. I don't have the exact numbers for the three communities, but what I can say is that the balance between those three communities or neighborhoods is equivalent to Laurier Heights and Parkview, and it keeps communities of interest together. So that's why you're saying what you are. You would take a part out and bring other parts in to make up for that. I understand. Now, another point. We don't have community leagues in Quebec. Can you explain what that is exactly? I don't quite understand what you mean. Well, in the good old times, and in Alberta, that means about 1905, 1904, there were people who were part of a neighborhood, you know, Garneau, Englewood. They gave themselves a name. And they wanted their own community identity. So they all got together to fund these leagues. They made community leagues. They had community centers. Some people have big facilities. It also includes community gardens. There are 26 community leagues in my riding throughout the city. And throughout the city, there are 160, rather. Now, with respect to the airport and the development plan for the airport, that also represents potential demographic growth. Was that taken into account by the commissioners? And if yes or no, what's your opinion? Well, that would be a question to put to the commissioners, because if you look at potential development in Blatchford, according to Edmonton's numbers, that represents growth of 30,000 people. So if you take that math into account, and you already have 30,000 in Blatchford, well, that changes the makeup of the riding. So if you take that into account, what it means is that Edmonton Centre will be going down and the others going up. Now, we're not there yet because there are houses and apartments being built, but obviously, over 10 or 20 years, this will become a very important factor and have an impact on Edmonton Centre. Thank you. I now have a question for Mr. Chahal. Thank you for coming before us today. What does your proposal mean for municipal councils? Because they're in your area. Are you supported? Do you feel that you really are properly representing your area in that regard, in the changes that you're asking for? Were there any other MPs who supported your suggestions and who have told you that they support you? So I'd like to know what people of the community feel, what municipal councillors feel about what you're saying, and fellow MPs.
Thank you, Mr. Therian, for your question. And I think we, in the objections, both councillors had objected to the original proposal. Both would also argue that clear boundaries be defined by keeping communities of interest together and keeping these major roadways as the boundaries between the communities. I have three actually city councillors that I overlay with right now, and several MLAs, 4 of them. And as I mentioned, at the provincial boundaries, Airport Trail, that major highway, is the boundary between the 2 provincial ridings. Through City Council, this is through the riding of one constituency of the City Councillor, but Skyview the new Skyview riding would have several city councillors because there's another highway that intersects them. The main objection made by our former mayor, Mayor Nenshi, and others was to keep community organizations, associations, community leagues together and not be separated. And what this new proposal has done, it's taken one community who has a strong relationship and interest with their community members, and it separates them and puts them in a riding with no direct connection, but also a big gap in how to connect with those community members and representation moving forward.
So it sounds clear to me. Like I said, I'm not familiar with that area. But then what do you think the commissioners had in terms of the grounds for making those changes, given what you are saying? What were they thinking?
It's all based on population. Using the 2021 census data, they aligned the population. This part of the city is seeing tremendous growth. The new Calgary Skyview is the fastest growing riding, and I would argue over the last 2.5 years, it's probably seen 30,000 new members. So it's just to balance population. And that's why there's a number of precedents across the country. I think if you did the census today, you'd see it very closely aligned based on the real numbers of the day.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
6 minutes.
Well, thank you so much, Chair, and I thank all of you for being here today to talk about this really important issue. Before I ask questions, and I will get to this, I do want to read a notice to motion for the committee. I'm hoping to just read it in, and we can have chats about it later on, because I really do want to get into the questions, but I just wanted to let the committee know as soon as possible. I've made sure, of course, that our clerk has a copy, so they can be handed out for you guys to reflect on. So my notice to motion is simply this, that the committee, as part of its study on foreign election interference, invite the independent special rapporteur on foreign interference, David Johnson, to appear before the committee no later than the week of April the 24th. So I'll leave it at that, and happy to have conversations later on. So if I could start with you, Mr. Chahal, first. It seems to me that your suggested change would give the proposed Calgary McKnight riding an inordinately large population, in fact, the biggest in the province. So could you just give us any suggestions on what areas that might be suggested to be removed from McKnight to account for this, or if that's part of your plan?
It's not. Calgary Skyviews right now the riding represents over 160,000 individuals based on the 2021 census. I believe it's much higher. All we've asked is those communities kept together. If there is a larger variance, community interest and identity is more of a concern than the population, because the new riding of Calgary Skyview is the fastest growing riding. It's already probably grown by 30,000 people over the last 2.5 years. And so I don't see the population variance of a concern, because I believe now, with the adjustments made, they're probably equal. There's no new growth in the new Calgary McKnight, or very minimal. All the new growth in Calgary in the north center, northeast sector, as you see the swaths of land provided in the maps, it's all in north central and northeast Calgary. And with newcomers coming, I would anticipate Calgary seeing about 30,000 plus newcomers to Calgary per year, that 40 to 50% reside in this northeast, north central quadrant.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Bossino, if I could come to you second. It seems to me that you argued the Laurier Heights, Parkview neighborhood should be re-added to Edmonton Centre because they share community halls with the Crestwood neighborhood inside the riding. I have been there, but I am not an expert on all these neighborhoods, so apologize if I'm mistaking any of this. However, all of these three neighborhoods have separate community halls and community leagues. They are all in the Edmonton Community League District E, but District E is split in half between the proposed Edmonton Centre and Edmonton West. So could you just explain why the community leagues in Laurier Heights and Parkview are connected to Crestwood and not the adjacent neighborhoods of Linwood, Jasper Park, and West Jasper Sherwood?
It's a good question, and I do think I want to thank you for your work on this committee, because I know that you do a lot of work, good work on this committee. And what I'll say about Parkview, Crestwood, and Laurier Heights is there's a particular development that's happened in that part of Edmonton. It's the south part of the riding that follows the river, and some of that is population growth. Some of it is these community leagues are in the wealthier areas, and I can say that there's fierce identity within community leagues, and each of them over time was able to raise enough money to create their own community leagues. But for example, Parkview, for which our government was able to get some money to do an upgrade to a 50-year-old rink, is shared by 3 different schools, and they actually have kids coming in from different parts of the leagues to be able to use that shared rink. The curling rink that's in Crestwood, for example, is the curling rink for the whole south part of the riding. And so what you've seen over time is not just a development of the community league, but the city analyze what needs are in which community leagues. And so that's a contiguous part of Edmonton Centre. It has been since 2004, and would offset the 10,000 people that would be represented by adding Calder, Athlone, and Kensington on the north side. And that part could become part of Edmonton Northwest and would keep what has now been moved out of the riding into the riding, and you'd have a contiguous whole.
Thank you. So I'm just curious. So adding Laurier Heights and Parkview would reduce the population of Edmonton West by about 6,000, if I got that correctly. And then the proposed Edmonton West riding is already below the population quota. So do you have any other areas to suggest that might be added to Edmonton West to account for this?
I don't have any other suggestions on Edmonton West, but following up on what Mr. Shahal is saying, we do see population growth taking place across what is now the riding of Edmonton Centre, and those areas of Edmonton West and Northwest will continue to grow, and we would be within the population boundaries of plus or minus 5 of 115,000 in Edmonton Centre. And so we have looked at the regional map, and by adding the riding that is coming into the region, we do think that all of those ridings would have the growth they need to be within that plus or minus 5%.
And I understand the Commission doesn't actually look at future growth of population, but just thought I would add that. I've only got a few seconds, so Mr. Soroka, what is the value of trying to keep all of Yellowhead County in one riding when doing so requires splitting up other counties? If you could just help me understand that.
Well, currently, the counties that I'm changing are already divided up as well. So all it's doing is just moving the boundaries a little different areas, as well as then it makes more unity to Yellowhead as one entire county. The other thing is that some of the boundaries that they have used, the Commission, were quite disjointed and very hard to follow if you were actually trying to campaign.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we don't have a lot of time yet left before the next panel. So we're going to go with a couple of minutes right there to Mrs. Kuzi, and then we'll come to the Liberals, and I'll try to come a minute. I'll try. Mrs. Kuzi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, fellow Albertans, for being here today. Mr. Chahal, I'm going to read from the Commission report. The Commission received representations urging to keep the northeast sector of Calgary together in 2 electoral districts, Calgary Skyview and the renamed Calgary East, consisting of closely connected communities with shared interests and priorities. Some argue that the Commission should base the electoral districts on the City of Calgary municipal wards, of which there are 14. However, the Commission only had 11 electoral districts with which to work, making the compromise inevitable. The Commission had proposed 3 electoral districts from the Northeast. The 2 electoral districts recommended by the groups would be located east of Deerfoot Trail, interestingly, where not on the conservative side of Deerfoot Trail in the west, north of Glenmore Trail, and bounded by Calgary's eastern and northern limits. However, the recommended changes could not be accomplished without making substantial alterations to the boundaries of many other electoral districts in Calgary. For these reasons, the Commission did not accept the group's recommendations. However, the Commission has made some modifications in response to the group's concerns. It has, as you mentioned, added Calgary International Airport, an important economic hub with close ties to adjacent communities to the Calgary-McKnight district. It also modified the boundary between Calgary Skyview and the Calgary-McKnight electoral districts by adding more of the densely populated. So what I'm hearing is you went to the Commission with the proposal. They rejected the proposal. The change information, as Ms. Sahota indicated, is now information you would like to change again in this second iteration. So I see the Electoral Commission as having listened to your requests, but not responded to them in perhaps the way that you would have hoped. And so it is new information, but new information provided by the Commission. I also wanted to address your comment about the 14.3% variance, which is, as my colleagues have mentioned, the highest. The 2 you mentioned, Dartmouth and Kingston and the Islands, these are large rural swaths and do not have the flexibility of an urban environment. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chahal, that was basically 2 minutes. That was really really fastly spoken for interpretation. And when I've already said it one time that we need to be mindful of that, I find it discouraging, disappointing. I have many other words that have not been heard. So I hope people are listening to the words coming out of my mouth. Mr. Chahal, I'm going to offer you 1 minute to answer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the comments. I didn't make a submission in the first one. That was community organizations and who did that on their own for the best interests of Northeast Calgary. What they did object to was splitting up Northeast Calgary communities. What they did ask for was that the community of Saddle Ridge, which on the first one was split up, not be split up. And they added a part in, but took another part out to balance the numbers and variation. In Alberta and across Canada, there's variations. As Ms. Blaney identified, we don't look at future growth as the Commission doesn't, but we do consider a variation. And I believe the most important part of this committee and of the work it's done to keep communities of interest together, that's a priority. And that's a priority to provide good representation. And I think everybody, including the provincial boundaries, which one is represented by the NDP and the other by the UCP, also have Airport Trail as a natural boundary.
Thank you for that. Mrs. Romanado.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank the witnesses for being with us today. So before I begin, I will leave some time to my colleagues, so if your answers could be short, please. The one thing I do want to mention, Madam Chair, that surprised me, I've read all of these Commission reports, and there's something that sticks out on this one. It's page 27, a matter of concern, where there seems to have been a calculated effort by an MP to persuade the Commission to maintain existing electoral boundaries. So I'm just flagging that because that's the only province that I see that in, and I think that's something, and I know the analysts also highlighted it, so it's something a little bit concerning. But my question is actually for Mr. Chahal and Mr. Boissonnault. We heard from our colleagues here that there was support from other parties for their presentation. So number 6 actually asked the question, and I know we have 2 different parties here on the panel, so I just wanted to, if you could very quickly let us know if you are in agreement with your colleagues that have presented here today. So if you could very quickly just say yes or no in terms of their presentations, because we want to know that other MPs are in agreement. So, Mr. Soroka, could you let me know if you're in agreement with your two colleagues next to you?
I'm going to have to plead ignorance. I'm not that familiar with the communities of Edmonton and Calgary, even though now my boundary is going to be touching Calgary.
Okay. Mr. Howell?
I would say yes, because everybody's clearly shown that they want to keep communities of interest and identity together, and I think that should be a priority, and I think everybody's talked about that.
Thank you. Mr. Boissonneau?
I support my colleagues at this panel.
Perfect. Mr. Walkerton?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that both Arnold Viersen and I were here together because the changes that we're proposing affect just the ridings that the two of us represent. No other ridings are impacted. We came here together to demonstrate solidarity with that. I don't believe that my colleagues that border some of these other members have been consulted with regards to these changes, and I can verify that they haven't confirmed that they haven't supported them.
Okay. I don't know if you have any, there's more time.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Can you just mute your mic there? There we go. Thank you. I would just point out. I don't know much about the areas in Edmonton or Calgary, but I would point out that Mr. Workington and myself, even under the new boundaries, have to drive through different portions of each other's ridings to get to other portions of our ridings.
Okay.
And I would notice.
Sorry, Mr. Viersen, just based on what the question was and the answers are not coming close, but the first three I will mark high. Mr. Turnbull, 1 minute.
Mr. Chahal, I just wanted to ask you a question. I noticed in your submission you also included some comments around name change, and I wanted to get your perspective on that and why that's so important from your perspective.
Thank you for that question. Well, the new riding of Calgary Skyview that's proposed with the name, I think better reflects with the name of Calgary Country Hills or Calgary Stony would be a more appropriate name because it's a new riding and it spans North Centre and Northeast Calgary. Those are major roadways that identify better with those communities. The current Calgary McKnight would be more identified better with using the name of Calgary Skyview because it has the airport and the communities mostly that remain in that riding have been Calgary Skyview historically. And so I think it's important. One other point I'd like to just acknowledge is that there's no other MP in the new riding because it's a new riding. So I haven't had the ability to talk to the MP of that riding because I don't know who that's going to be, but I hope to work closely with him in the future. Or her.
Excellent. So with that, I would like to thank our colleagues, both in person and virtual, for joining us today. We wish you the best as we switch over to the next panel. I'm just going to try to maximize our time with colleagues. There is 2 budgets that need to be approved. One is for the redistribution for Alberta, as we're doing. Lunch was provided. And the other one will be for the meetings that we have for Quebec redistribution. Is there any concerns with us approving this budget? Seeing none, clerk, thank you for your work, and we'll welcome the the Quebec panel, and we'll just pause for a quick 30 seconds.
We are going to now resume meeting number 58. For our second hour, we will begin our study of the Quebec Electoral Boundary Commission report. For our second panel, we have with us today Maxime Blanchet-Jonca, Bernard Généreux, the Honorable Diane Leboutier, and Christina Michaud. Welcome to everyone. You each have 4 minutes for your comments, and we will begin with Mr. Blanchet-Jonca. Welcome. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and colleagues. Thank you for inviting me before the Procedure and House Affairs Committee today. I'm going to use my time to express my strong objection to the redistribution by the Commission with this important mandate. I'm going to get straight to the point because of the time allowed. So I want to get to the point that the political weight of our riding will be reduced by removing the number of federal districts between Montmagny and the Magdalen Islands. And this is an attack on the representation of our regions. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm really upset about this. Even though this has been justified using quotas and balancing the population and representation, it does not pass the smell test. We are more than numbers. Mayors and prefects who have a long memory remember this. They remember way back to 1960. There were 7 ridings between Montmagny and the Île de la Madeleine. And since then, redistribution have led to deeper and deeper cuts in our representation in Eastern Quebec, so much so that today it's going from 4 to 3 ridings in that area. But I'm just going to give you some information. That territory has not shrunk. So it's all very well for the federal government to make speeches about the importance of revitalizing our country and services. It really doesn't mean anything if this proposal is approved. The political weight of our regions is being erased bit by bit. These are people who have never come to where we live and are deciding on boundaries that affect us. So they can decide on issues that are as crucial as resource development, agriculture, villages, resorts, tourism, and heritage. We cannot allow this to happen. And we're still removing a riding would bring about a reduction in service centers and riding offices. And these things are crucial in our regions. It helps citizens who need to deal with failures on the part of the government, on the federal government. It gives a voice to those who are marginalized by the federal machine. So reducing these services even further would have a disastrous effect on the most vulnerable of our citizens. The Commission is using population decline to justify its proposals, but it's forgetting one thing. There have been positive migration trends in our areas over the past few years. There is remote work, and therefore there is real estate pressure in our towns. Also, there's a will on the part of many people to take advantage of our regions, living in our natural areas, many families. So there is an opportunity now, a golden opportunity that can be seized to give our regions greater value, not less. They mustn't be erased. And there is a solution. It's simple, and it's legal. Pursuant to Section 15, we need to be given a status of exception for our areas between Matapédia and the Île de la Madeleine, so that the status quo is maintained. I'm going to tell you quite frankly, anything else will be fatal to the interests of the citizens in the Lower St. Lawrence, Île de la Madeleine, and it will be detrimental to our entire area. It will stifle the political voice of our area, and all these rural regions will be affected and weakened, our identity, our culture. All this can be erased, and it breaks my heart to have to say this. Thank you, Madam Chair. And on behalf of all the citizens in my area, I'm asking you to maintain the status quo. We want there to be time for questions and answers, so when I give you the signal, we have to move on to the next person. Mr. Généreux, welcome. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for having given me an opportunity to speak. I want to object to the Commission's report for my riding of Montmagny, Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. It would become the future riding of Montmagny, Témiscouata, Témiscamingue. And I heard that you said I should speak more slowly, so I will try. If the redistribution is maintained, the new riding will be inappropriate, and here's why. First, adding Kataskamik is appropriate based on the grounds that were used and given the path of reconciliation that we are on. So we are fine with that name being part of the name of the riding. Now, with respect to Montmagny, over the past few years at the provincial level, it has been part of the South Shore, and it includes the two neighboring RMCs. These three RMCs have developed over the past few decades common relations and links. Montmagny could be replaced in a more representative way by Côte du Sud, which would be a more inclusive designation for our MRC. Now, with respect to Témiscouata, it has about 20,000 people, over 19 municipalities. And we feel that it is imperative that its name be included in the name of our riding, out of respect for the voters in this area and out of respect for its own identity. Now, here is what hurts. It's the absence of Rivière-du-Loup in the future name of our riding. It is absolutely inappropriate to simply minimize the removal of the most populous MRC in our area. It's an important hub in the Lower St. Lawrence. This is where you find the biggest number of services, industries, businesses, education centers. Rivière-du-Loup is much more than that as well. As mentioned, it's a hub. It's a road hub between the Maritimes, the Lower St. Lawrence, and the West. It's also a maritime hub for the North Shore, and it's also an airport link. It's an important tourism destination. The areas in our neck of the woods are known internationally. We have a cultural reputation as well, and the name should be in the final name of the riding. So I submit humbly that the Commission and its commissioners take note of my observations that stem from consultations with the mayors and the prefects, as well as with the Chamber of Commerce in Rivière-du-Loup, so that the name of my riding become Côte du Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Kataskamit, Témiscouata. It's a long one, but we like it that way. And the order of the name follows the geography of my area. It goes from the west to the east, because you go through the South Shore, you go through Rivière-du-Loup, and through Témiscouata. It's very important that these four entities be included in that order so that those who are visiting understand our area. I'd also like to deplore the fact that under the current act, we're losing a riding in eastern Quebec. I am of the opinion that parliamentarians have to take another look on the realities of MPs in rural regions. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work, and I count on you to deal with the issue of the name of my riding and that you submit it to the Commission so that they change the name. Thank you very much. Bravo. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the Minister Diane Leboutillier. You have 4 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank you for having taken the time to listen to us and to discuss such an important subject. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that there is a common denominator here between our colleagues before you, and that's the future of federal democracy in Eastern Quebec. I'm here to tell you about my profound concerns and the concerns of my constituents regarding the new electoral redistribution proposed in the Boundaries Report for Quebec. Some factors make this proposal absolutely unacceptable and inconsistent for the constituents in my riding. First of all, in 2016, the Quebec government gave a special status to the Île de la Madeleine because they are islands, and this status recognizes unique challenges that these islands face, including transport and access to public services. The Île de la Madeleine are about 200 kilometers away from the Quebec shores, and they are only accessible by plane or by boat. If you have enough patience and time to get across two provinces, 700 kilometers and 7 hours of a ferry. So there is no other riding, federal riding, that faces these kinds of challenges. And there are no others that face the kinds of climate changes that happen, and in our area, weather changes rather, that hinder movement in our area. This can have an important impact on residents, businesses, but also for the MPs that represent this area. To represent this beautiful riding, and for having represented it for more than 8 years, I can tell you that there is fog, freezing rain, wind at 120 kilometers an hour, planes that are constantly canceled. I've seen all of this. The inhabitants of the Magdalen Islands deserve access to their MP so that they can represent their interests within the federal government. Adding 2 MRCs to this area compromises this seriously. Second, by adding Matagny to the current riding of Gaspésie-Les Îles de la Madeleine, there would also be inconsistency in terms of how we're represented. This MRC is actually attached to the administrative region of the Lower St. Lawrence, which is called Region 1, and the rest of the riding is part of Region 11. So what this means is that Matagny does not share the same service centers as the rest of the population, like hospitals and government services, as well, and also the cultural exchanges that take place within the riding. So for all these reasons, even though the status quo would be preferable, it would be more natural and consistent to attach this MRC to the neighboring riding rather than to the new Gaspésie, Île de la Madeleine, Mistigouche riding. And the same applies to Matapédia, that is already in the neighboring riding and has been since the last report. If this were done, then there would be better representation, fairer representation of the interests of these 2 RCMs. I also want to point out that there was broad consultation, and I can tell you that what I am saying is supported by municipal elected representatives. And I tabled with the clerk of the committee letters of support. One of them is from the mayor and president of the maritime community of the Magdalen Islands and the 5 prefect representatives in the MRCs and the Gaspésie. I'd like to thank you for the invitation, and I'd be open to any questions you may have. Thank you very much, Minister. And we'll now move on to Christina Michaud. Thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having invited me here today and to give me the opportunity to defend my part of the country. As I briefly explained in my notice of objection, I strongly object to the changes proposed in the electoral map being proposed by the Electoral Commission report for Quebec. Specifically, I object to the proposed removal of the riding of Avignon, La Métis, Matane, Matapédia, one of the 4 ridings in Greater Eastern Quebec. And the reason is simple. Erasing this riding from the map means weakening the political weight of an entire region. to defend this proposal that would have a huge impact on our area. The Commission is mainly using the concept of quotas, or rather the electoral quota. However, respectfully, I fear that the Commission has disregarded two important factors that are in the Electoral Boundaries Act, including the respect of communities of interest, the historical pattern of an electoral district, as well as maintaining a manageable geographic size for districts in sparsely populated rural or northern regions of the province. The Lower St. Lawrence and the Gaspésie are sparsely populated, and they are rural. The area across this vast region is almost fully inhabited. From between Montmagny and Île-de-la-Madeleine, there are 184 municipalities and 4 Indigenous communities that are grouped within 15 RCMs, including the string of the Magdalen Islands. The Commission is recommending that we move half of the riding to the neighboring riding of Rimouski-Niger, Témiscouata-les-Basques, and the other half to Gaspésie-les-Îles-de-la-Madeleine, which would create 2 territories of more than 15,000 kilometers each. You'll understand, Madam Chair, that the fact that an area of this size is fully inhabited compared to other large ridings where the population is concentrated in one part and the rest is completely inhabited makes the concept of representation difficult and risky when the elected representative has to act against their constituents. The importance of preserving communities of interest and historical patterns is essential. Our area has a local system of governance that is unique, where there are many stakeholders that work well together. Chopping up the electoral map of the eastern region could lead to an imbalance that could lead to a reduction in services to the population, when the size of the riding that I represent already implies many challenges. The arguments that I'm presenting before you today were also presented to the Commission last September by myself, but also by many of the regional elected representatives, mayors, prefects, a senator, and they all, without exception, demanded that the status quo remained. For the people of my area, the solution is clear. Keep the map as it is. They're with me in spirit, but they also took the time to send their opinions in writing, and I sent to the clerk of your committee a document that contains 55 resolutions from the municipalities, the RCMs, as well as civil society groups, who unequivocally support my remarks today. They agree with me that the political weight of our region must be not only preserved, but also protected. The 125 members of the Quebec National Assembly also support us in this. They unanimously voted last 7th of March a motion that condemns the proposal to eliminate Avignon, La Métis, Matane-Matapédia, and they call on the revision of its recommendation. Our colleagues from Quebec all say, rightly so, that any loss of political weight would threaten the democratic health of our nation. Removing my riding is also a concern for many of my colleagues here in the House of Commons. You've probably noticed that I obtained the signatures of the 3 colleagues here with me today, but also signatures from members of each party in the House of Commons. This unanimous objection to recommending the removal of Avignon, La Métis, Matane, Matapédia shows that the issue goes well beyond political colors and partisan colors, and that it is the duty of all of us to preserve the political weight of regions in Quebec and Canada. Thank you, Madam Chair.
OK, donc, on va continuer maintenant avec les rondes de 6 minutes.
We'll now continue with 6-minute rounds. And I'm going to ask everyone to please speak at a reasonable pace so that our interpreters can do their work. And interpreters, just raise your hand if people are speaking too quickly, and I'll ask them to slow down. I hope that won't have to happen, but we will take steps to make sure that we have a meeting that can go smoothly. Now, we'll start with 6 minutes, starting with Mr. Berthold, followed by Mr. Fergus, and then Mr. Terrien, and then Ms. Blaney. Mr. Berthold, thank you very much. Madam Chair. It is my habit often to try and fit many words into a small amount of time, but I'll make an effort for the interpreters today, and this is a very important appearance today. I am also a member that represents an important region in Quebec, and our work is so important. It is also difficult work. I have 59 municipalities in my riding, and you'll have an opportunity to hear from me speak soon to the importance of rural representation. Now, there is a point I wanted to raise with Mr. Généreux. Very little attention is often paid to the importance of the names of ridings. And Mr. Généreux, You have made a name change an important issue in what you were saying today, and I saw that in the documents were sent to us that much has been said by the people of Rivière-du-Loup who are losing their name. Now, many people have a hard time keeping a very long name in mind and pronouncing such a long name, but can you tell us why it's so important to keep that long name in your riding? Well, there are various areas in Quebec where riding names represent perhaps, let's say, well-known historical figures, or where it represents a very defined area. But my riding is in two administrative areas, La Chaudière-Appalaches and Côte-du-Sud. And what this means is that we have a vast territory, like Madame Michaud said earlier. We have about 2,000 square kilometers in ours. So these are vast areas. And it's very important, it's very difficult, rather, to put it under one single name. Now, probably when the commissioners decided to bring the name down to 3 parts instead of 4, they chose Kastamic-Témiscouata. It was probably so that the name wouldn't be so long, because as it stands, it's Montmagny, Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. So, and that was already a long name. But why do I want to keep a long name? It's out of respect for the people who live in this riding. Now, I'm bringing it down somewhat because we do have 5 RMCs in my area. We can't have 5 names. From what I understood, there couldn't be more than 4 in a riding name, and that's why I'm proposing Montmagny, rather Côte-du-Sud, which includes Montmagny and the 3 other RCMs. So there was Kamouraska. But if we say Côte-du-Sud, then we've already got 3 RCMs, and then Rivière-du-Loup is the most populous city in my riding, and it still will be for a long time. It represents 30% of the population, so we can't just forget about it. And I don't understand why the commissioner took Rivière-du-Loup out of the name. I imagine they expected an objection because it wasn't well thought out. And I told them to consult on this. I gave them a presentation. I said, it makes no sense. You have to keep Rivière-du-Loup. But I'm trying again now, and I'm hoping that on behalf of the population, this will happen. Now, I'm not saying that huge crowds turned out, but how can I put this? People came forward, and I wanted them to come forward. I encouraged conversations and discussion amongst the city and chambers of commerce, and everyone agreed that the name has to remain. And then there are the islands in front of Rivière-du-Loup that are so well known. There are so many islands that are known internationally. So, you know, Rivière-du-Loup, people make the association with the ferry when you talk about Rivière-du-Loup. So, is my answer too long, Mr. Berthold? I'm sorry if it is. I didn't want to take up your entire 6 minutes. So I think what you're saying is that this is also about this feeling of belonging in a riding. And that's why the name is important. And that's why I wanted to hear you speak to this. I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak well beyond your opening remarks, to find out what it meant. Now, at the end of your opening remarks, you said that you hope, you want commissioners to take more into account rural representation. Yes, I think it was a very poor choice on the part of the commissioners to take a riding out in eastern Quebec. It's so unfortunate. I condemn it. Here we are before you today because it's up to us to make sure that our realities are preserved. And these things should have been thought of in advance. At the Supreme Court, there have already been rulings that have been made in light of certain electoral groupings and changes in ridings. And when we're talking about effective representation, it's very important to go into the future to see what impact these changes will have in the future. Thank you very much. Mr. Fergus. Thank you very much. And I'd like to congratulate the four of you for coming today. And also, it's a show of unanimity and consensus between you. I'd like to put my first question to Ms. Leboutier. As you know, in their report, the Commission decided to go ahead with using the electoral quotient. And so let's say if the Avignon RMC were added, would that respect the 25%? And would it meet the criteria of extraordinary circumstances? Well, before answering, I'd like to say that I agree with what Mr. Généreux said. We really have to think about rural representation in that next stage, in that next report in 10 years' time. But to answer your question, Mr. Fergus, what I would say is this. The proposal that I brought forward suggests moving Matagny to the neighboring riding. Matagny represents a little less than 14,000 voters. And the variance in my riding, which is over 75,000 inhabitants, is what we call the electoral quotient, and that's at minus 35%. I understand that it doesn't meet the minus 25% criteria. Now, if you add the Avignon RMC, that will go to minus 20.6. And in that case, we would fall under 15.2 and extraordinary circumstances. As the Commission said, no riding should have under 81,000 plus ridings. And what we're proposing then means that we'd be at over 88,000 inhabitants. I'd be happy to provide you all these calculations. So I think that our proposal is more than reasonable. If you could table that with the clerk, that would be terrific. Thank you. You raised the issue of adding 2 MRCs to your riding. And that would include the islands. What would that mean in terms of access to the islands and the ability for the elected representative to represent them? Well, what I can tell you, as I mentioned earlier, is that the riding that I represent really has a unique characteristic. You won't find that anywhere else, given the presence of the Magdalen Islands. And the only way to get there is on a plane or by boat. And if you want to get there by boat, well, that's 700 kilometers, 2 provinces, and 5 hours on a ferry. The Magdalen Islands are very unique. And I've been trying to make sure that I get to the islands at least 4 times a year. Now, I can never stay for very long because, as I was saying, there are storms, hurricanes, freezing rain. I mean, you think of it, you name it, we get it in the Magdalen Islands. So it makes it very difficult, but it also makes it unique. And I believe in democracy. I believe in people being able to have access to their MP. So there would be a democratic deficit. By adding 2 ridings, or counties, 2 MRCs rather, that aren't necessarily part of the region. In terms of the islands, it would be very problematic, and that we don't want that. My last question, with the time that I have, Madam Chair, is this, and it's for the four of you. You've all spoken about the importance of maintaining the representation in the Lower St. Lawrence area. I don't know who would like to speak, but do you see the future impacts with future redistributions? How can one truly, properly represent people in such a vast area with so few people? Well, if I may, hello again. I gave you a picture, all of you, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. I'm sure if you look at it, you'll understand that it's actually the same territory. So we're asking people to be efficient in a huge territory. In 1960, it went from 7 to the current territory. And, you know, that current territory still exists. It didn't get flooded out or anything. But now we're asking 3 people to do the same work over tens of thousands of square kilometers. So you can understand that in terms of representation, it's difficult. We don't have limousines or helicopters for our people. Thank you. I'm sure the others want to respond as well, but perhaps we can try for the second round. Mr. Terrien. Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to welcome the members who came before us. I'm going to take 30 seconds here to say that I've been to your region. I was there in Percé, Matane, La Rimouski when the commissioners were there. Unfortunately, I wasn't in your area. Unfortunately, I had to do something else. So please don't blame me for not going to all of them. But what I want to say is this. All those people were talking about was losing this looting of their riding, whether it be in any of the ridings of the members before you. They were talking about this removal of a riding, and they were all unanimous. But I'm surprised that because that's all they were talking about, and that's not all I'm hearing about here. So I'd like to ask you a question, Ms. Michaud, in terms of services to the population, in terms of how much of the territory is occupied and inhabited, what are the consequences of losing a riding? Thank you for the question, and I did briefly speak to this. What we fear is the loss of services in our area. You know, it's not like just going to Montreal where you'll find a member's office, riding office on one corner and then another one on another corner. There have been closures. There's very little left in the way of federal services in our area, so our riding offices have almost become extensions of federal services. In my riding, for example, I have 4 riding offices. There are very few of us, out of us, all of us in Canada, all of us MPs, to have these offices. Why? Because I don't want my constituents to have to drive for 3 hours just to have to sign a form that gives us or anyone else access to their information to be able to move forward their files. So these are the kinds of things we're dealing with. So the changes also affect the budgets of our offices. We do not have enough to be able to pay for an extra office and an extra salary. So you have to take all these factors into account. When we've been helping these people since 2019, I mean, we have over 1,000 files that we've been able to resolve for constituents because we're able to make a call. We're able to bring it to Services Canada. They come and see us when they're stuck. So when we're talking about people inhabiting this area, it's very important to think about this. When we spoke to the Commission, they told us that compared to other ridings like Abitibi, Bay James, Kenora in Ontario, where there are also hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, it's not a lot. But here's the difference. And I have maps that show it. In the Gaspésie and in La Matapedia, you'll see that our population is dispersed over several thousands of kilometers. You have many hours to do in a car to go and see them. And if you look at Abitibi, as you can see, there's a concentration of the population. There are a few other communities dispersed here and there throughout the region, but the main community is in Val d'Or. So there's a huge difference. We have to be able to go and see our constituents. I have 56 mayors. If I wanted to be able to see one councillor per week, it would take me almost a year to do it. Now, I'll stop now because I know you have other questions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you for the answer. Mr. Blanchet-Jonca, those who know you know that your region is so important to you. I'd like to hear you speak to the loss of political weight if you lose an MP. Well, I think I was pretty clear, and I was pretty clear when I answered Mr. Fergus. It's a huge loss. How can you be efficient for the same area? It's huge. It means hours and hours of driving. We had 7 members in 1960. Then there were 4. And 2022, they're suggesting 3. But we're talking about the same number of thousands of square kilometers. And we don't have a plane. We don't have a helicopter. We have to drive through our ridings. And most of the time, it's ourselves or our assistants, sometimes volunteers, to help us do the work. So reducing the number of elected representatives has a huge impact. So how do you stimulate the regional economy, the development of your area, when you're taking people away who are there to help you develop economically, socially, and culturally? And as a region, how do you move forward when you're being pulled back? It doesn't make any sense. Now, I'd add this. It also has to do with the loss of territorial identity. Mr. Généreux brought this up when he was talking about the removal of the name of Rivière-du-Loup. Now, when an RMC no longer sees themselves on a map, its name is erased, and therefore it also erases their feeling of belonging. Thank you very much. Ms. Blaney.
Well, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank all the members for being here today and to testifying. So, of course, I'm a member of Parliament from British Columbia, but I represent a very rural riding. It's a huge area. People are dispersed all over it. I don't get to stay in one large community and visit and just go out occasionally. I spend a lot of time on the road traveling on boats, on ferries, sometimes in waterplanes, depending on the situation. So I really hear what you're saying about that need to not have people have to travel too far away. The fact that often MP offices are like service providers, because if the MP's office isn't there, it means people can't access services. Or they have to travel a long distance. So I appreciate that everyone is here to talk about the importance of this region and representation. So I'm just wondering, all of you spoke about it directly. So I guess the first thing I want to get clear is, does everyone on this panel believe there should be 4, not 3 ridings? And then the second part of my question, and I'm just leaving it open to all of you, is there was also mention from every person testifying here today that looking forward, the Commission should look at rural communities and how to understand them in a different way. So I'm just wondering, what do you think the Commission should consider, and what should we be promoting future forward in honoring the fact that we have such a large country with many very remote areas that have unique stories, that if we don't have voices in Parliament to share those stories, it creates a weakness not only for those regions in terms of political strength, but for the strength of our whole country.
Je peux peut-être me permettre, merci pour...
Well, perhaps I could attempt an answer. Thank you for the question. And I think you do understand our regional and rural reality. Mr. Blanchette-Jonca said this very clearly earlier. Every 10 years, we lose something in our area. And the commissioners use the argument of the census every 10 years and the demographic decline in certain regions. Now, we know there's a senatorial provision in the Act. Well, maybe there should be a clause in the Act to keep a reasonable number of voices in the House of Commons. Because when you look at what's happened over the past several years, well, maybe we're going to end up with 2 one day in the future, and 1 in the future, and maybe 100 then for Montreal. So when we're talking about representation, it's important to keep this in mind when you're coming to decisions like this. Perhaps you have to look at the status of a region. Well, we have 1 million more Canadians in the country, and they've mainly gone to urban centers. And I think in the future, we're going to have to look at effective rural representation. You also have a rural riding, and it becomes humanly almost impossible to represent these people. You know, when you can bike around your riding or walk around your riding, well, it's not the same reality at all. It's not the same human reality. You know, you need to be able to have the human capacity to represent your riding. And so if you consider that, perhaps minor changes need to be made. The commissioners don't have the power to change the Act, but we parliamentarians do have the power to change the next Election Redistribution Act. And I think maybe it may be important to think about what we need to do in the future to ensure that we do have this rural representation and that we have like a humanly acceptable, reasonable representation. Perhaps to add to that, you know, when we voted on the last time on the Act, we made sure that the 78 ridings in Quebec were protected. But I don't think we knew that the boundaries were going to be changed to the extent that they are. So let's say in 5 or 10 years, the population doubles. Well, then perhaps a member would be able to represent a riding. But under what's proposed, it's going to be impossible. I'm thinking of those who are future generations as well. It's going to be impossible for future generations and future MPs to have children, to have a spouse, because they're going to be traveling around. They're maybe going to have to be in a camper van, living there and traveling constantly. They'll never have time to be at home because they'll be so busy driving around. You know, you have ferries. You know, to get to the Magdalen Islands, when you take the ferry, you have to go through 2 provinces, New Brunswick, and you have to get to Surrey on Prince Edward Island. So these are very unique challenges that we face. Thank you very much for your question, Ms. Blaney. You said that under the current Act, can we have true representation and true political weight for all regions in Canada and in Quebec? Well, given this situation, I think it shows that we can't, because we're talking about how many people are inhabiting the territory. Do we want everyone to be in condo buildings downtown, or do we truly want to be able to occupy and develop these areas? Thank you very much.
Demi-4 minutes pour vous, Monsieur Gourde, suivi par...
Mr. Gourde, you're going to have 3 or 4 minutes. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank my colleagues for coming and for representing so well their ridings. I've had an opportunity for government announcements to be able to visit your area many times, so I know your area and I know your reality. You know, the opposite happened in my area. I had to give up half of my area because we have too many people. So I had to share municipalities that I had strong ties with. And during the hearings, I proposed to the commissioners a new redrawing of the boundaries that better reflected our reality. During the hearings last fall, did you propose a new map that would have allowed you to keep your areas? Because it is a bit of a domino game. In order to be able to keep 4 ridings, the map has to be changed. So did you go through that exercise? When we learned of this, it was the beginning of the month of August. Everyone was away on vacation in the Gaspésie, in the Île de la Madeleine, and I assume it's the same for my colleagues. That's when people are on vacation, and it's also where some people are working very hard in fisheries and tourism. So it was impossible being able to get in touch with mayors and prefects. And when the commissioners started their hearings, well, they started on the 6th of September, starting with us. So I can tell you, it was almost impossible for people to get organized. I really fell off my chair. I couldn't believe it. So that's why we're coming back to you today with a Plan B. Now, Plan A would have been status quo. But given that there are 78 ridings and given all the political decisions that have now been made, there has to be a Plan B. And I'm saying that we have to bring Avignon into the Gaspésie riding and the Île de la Madeleine, and therefore meet the criteria of electoral representation. I did contact all the prefects in the Lower St. Lawrence, and they were there on the 6th of September in the Gaspésie and on the 7th in Matane, and everyone called for the status quo, that that's the solution. Keep the map as it is. We have 78 ridings, figure it out. But for Eastern Quebec, what we're telling you is that we need 4 ridings, and everybody asked for that. And even when we're talking about support from the community, well, we often send news to our constituents every month. And I sent one at the beginning of the week. And within that week, I got back 600 notes saying they wanted the status quo. For many different reasons, losing services, all those reasons that I gave you. Plan A is still on the table. It's a priority for us. And I know there are mayors listening, prefects listening, and it's their priority as well. They are calling on you to keep the status quo. Mr. Berthold, what I would say next time.
Monsieur Gould, je vais me permettre, écoutez.
Mr. Gould, you know, democracy isn't just a slogan. And democracy means listening to the people we represent. And they told us, we're listening. They told us they want to keep the status quo. So we need to listen to the voices and the will of the people we represent. 4 minutes.
Madame Romanado.
Ms. Romanado.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Puis j'aimerais.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank my colleagues for their remarks. I realize that this is a very difficult file, and it's very difficult for you because despite everything you have done, it's been very difficult. I'd like to acknowledge all the work you have done, because there is a direct impact on you. Now, I'm just going to give you a few minutes to conclude. When you're given 3 minutes, it's not easy to say everything you want to be able to say. So perhaps you could all take 1 minute to conclude before we have to move on to others. I would say this. When we speak to those who are elected in our area, we hear that they want the status quo, 4 ridings. But I did take the time to think of a plan B because I knew that we had to be able to come forward with another option. And that is, for me, defending the boundaries of my riding and representing my constituents. And so the people I represent supported these options. And what I'm proposing is that Avignon could belong to our riding. 10 years ago, Avignon actually was a part of the Gaspésie, Île-de-la-Madeleine riding. And so it's kind of a return, a bit of a return back in time, a coming home, so to speak. Madam Chair. Ms. Romanado, I'm sorry, I'm renaming everyone here. Invite me to your riding, and then we can get to know each other better. Anyway, thank you for the question. I know that we've spoken about many points, but the Lower St. Lawrence area that I represent has people who are proud to live in that area. They've rolled their sleeves up over the past few years because, you know, one thing we didn't talk about was the aging of the population. 1 person out of 4 is over 64 years old, and it's going to be 1 out of 3 in the next several years. So imagine how difficult it is to keep people in our area and to develop our area when there are less working people. Many of these people are approaching retirement or are retired. So how do you vitalize an area when those people cannot necessarily be always active? So there are so many challenges we're facing. They really are a living laboratory. You know, we're talking about an attack on the boundaries in our area. Now, I don't necessarily want to be the bearer of bad news, but I think this is only going to get worse in the future. How can we develop these areas? Do we just want to stick people in areas where there's no infrastructure, no technology, no services? Is that where we want them to be stuck? So it's very difficult to develop at the same rate as people in urban areas. Well, I'm going to come back to the point that I made earlier when I sent out pamphlets asking people what their feelings were and why they wanted us to keep the status quo. They said huge distances for the MP, loss of services, loss of personal interest in democracy, loss of political weight in Ottawa, more difficult access to federal funds, and increasing power on the part of urban centers compared to rural areas. Well, I always like it when we have very clear roles, when we have an act, when we have clauses. Here we're sitting before a committee and we're talking about changes. Obviously, the status quo is something we would have want preserved. Now, people have done a lot of work. We would have wanted to keep things the way they were as well. There was unanimous support for this. But I'm a realist. I'm not a dreamer. Commissioners have to do their work, and their job isn't to change the law, it's to apply it. So perhaps the act should have been different. But I'm an optimist. And we have another 10 years here to make sure that these electoral changes will happen based on better legislation that provides for better representation. Thank you. Mr. Terrien. Madam Chair, I have one quick question for Ms. Michaud. La Bâtanie is in your riding. From what I understood from Madame Leboutier, it would be added to the Rimouski and not her riding. What do people think? Because that's your RMC. What are people saying in your area? Well, listen, obviously, all the elected representatives said that they wanted the status quo. And the commissioners asked regional representatives, if we can't give you the status quo, would you prefer to be on the side of Rimouski or on the side of the Gaspésie? And the elected representatives, the mayors, the prefects said, well, if we have to choose, we would prefer to be with the Gaspésie. It's a more natural relationship to have. So that's what the commissioners gave as a reason when they were sending La Matanie to the Gaspésie. Now, I'm not sure why Madame Louboutier is saying what she's saying today, because that's what was said then. Thank you.
Questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mrs. Blaney, you know the way to my heart, so thank you for that. With that, I would like to thank our colleagues for coming with us and sharing these comments. If you have anything else to add, please do send it to the clerk and she will share it with members. Members, with that, I wish you all a good day. Members of PROC, I will just let you know, next week we will be continuing with redistribution on Quebec. The clerk has divided panels into about 5 panels, so then we can get 2 done on Tuesday, 2 done on Thursday. Tuesday? 2 and 2. Yeah? Huh? Excellent. So we're going to have 2 panels on Tuesday, 2 panels on Thursday. Tuesday is budget day, and the lockup might have a little bit of an overlap. So I have asked wherever I can ask to say, is there a way to have about a 15-minute window for people coming from committee to be able to get into the lockup? Because if the lockup closes at 1 and our committee ends at 1, it would be really nice for them to accommodate our work, because we are doing work that is legislated. So just a heads up, I will keep you informed. As I gain information, I will give you information. Mr. Nader?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, do you think maybe the clerk could send us out a bit of that work plan for what the next few
We're
weeks
just working on it. So there was a document already sent out which shows you everyone who's coming, and then it gives you a sense of regions. So as the clerk is confirming, they're going to send out invitations tonight, but the challenge becomes is when we're sending out information then it's changing in real time, then it's hard to know which the current document is. So let's just give them a minute to send out invitations, and then they will send you some stuff.
Absolutely, no, I appreciate that. Just as things come on, and the other studies are also ongoing as well, kind of as those are able to be confirmed, just kind of a bit of a forward-looking document that we can see what's coming down the pipe so we can plan internally of...
Yes, we will definitely be working on that. And I'll just say, Mrs. Blaney, with the motion that you've put on notice, I know it's just on notice, there is some translation issues within it. And I also do notice the date of April 24th. And I think just some of it is a matter of making sure the schedules are possible, because we still have to move it and we still have to then work it. So I do appreciate the prescription that's been coming with motions lately, but I do like to also remind members that if I have an understanding of the intent of the committee, we'll always try to deliver it. But having a little bit of leniency does help us. But we'll figure that stuff out and get you some information. We'll see you next week. Excellent. Have a good day. Keep well and safe.
Thank you.